So, of course, Formula One over-egged the pudding and moved Miami 3 hours earlier for a completely dry race. Sod's law and all that. Welcome back to Motorsport 101. Hooey, Miami, never without drama. Welcome, everybody, to episode 652 of Motorsport 101. I'm your friendly neighborhood host, Dre Harrison. Shout out to Ghost Raptor in the chat, who's already stolen my intro of a better one, saying, thunder and lightning, very, very frightening. Quite right, Galileo. But I hope you guys are enjoying yourselves as we sit down and discuss mostly the Miami Grand Prix that took place this past weekend, and hectic weekend. Lot to get through, lot of news, lot of drama. There's a lot of tension and controversy as well, but I think it's only fair we catch up, because for the first time in 3 weeks, all three of us are on an episode together. Isn't that nice? It's been a little while, so hello, Cam. How's it going?
It's going all right. My house is no longer under major surgery on a daily basis. So that's a plus. I mean, it is. I'm hiding from the rain. It's been pouring pretty much all day in New Hampshire. Not that we could say the same for race day, where we moved it 3 hours up, as you mentioned, and then the rain never actually came, even when they said it was going to.
It rained,
Florida weather moment and all that.
It rained heavily before, because it stopped just before the Formula 2 race that was also moved a little bit later, or earlier, and then pushed a little bit later to compensate, trying to move the schedule around. And then that rain never actually landed in the Grand Prix itself. Also joining me, he's back from IMSA at Laguna Seca, but also, and I can't believe I'm saying this, round of applause to Mr. RJ O'Connell, Super GT commentator. Yes, sir. What's a man?
It's about damn time. But in all sincerity, thank you to a lot of people. Thank you to my bosses at Racer and DSE for being on board with me doing it. Thank you to Jonathan Green. Yes, that Jonathan Green of Macau Grand Prix was my co-commentator, and he was big on wanting me to do this alongside John Massagale with Speed City Broadcasting. Thank you to Greenlight International, who produced it, for trusting me to be added to a 3-person booth, which is chaos when you're all in the room together, and even more so when you're doing this on vMix, which is kind of like a more advanced Discord screen share. I hope I did a good enough job that I can do this again sometime in the future. It was a bit chaotic.
I would say so.
Yeah. Word of advice, if you can help it, don't go straight from Laguna Seca, take the 2-hour drive north to San Francisco, and then scramble to get all your stuff together in a San Francisco hotel room, hoping that your hotel Wi-Fi holds up enough so that you can actually be on the broadcast. I couldn't talk about it until like minutes before go time because of that. They weren't sure if my Wi-Fi was going to hold up, for understandable reasons, obviously.
Nervy one, I could say the least. And honestly, RJ, you did yourself immensely proud, my friend. You did a fantastic job. Like clear, concise, informative. You know, didn't step on anyone's toes. You were fantastic.
That shit was hard. Again, see the whole 3-person booth thing, and we're all like trying to bounce things off of each other without like stepping over one another. Anybody that's been in a large Discord call can relate to that. I don't want to make the first part of the show about me, though.
Of course.
Before we get into like all the nitty gritty of Miami, we want to take some time to remember not just one of the greatest racing champions that we've ever known. I would dare say that Alex Zanardi is one of the greatest sportsmen of the 20th and 21st century.
Well, I mean, yeah, for those who didn't hear the news, sadly, on Friday night, Alex Zanardi passed away at the age of 59. I could rattle off some numbers like we normally do on this show. He was a 2-time kart champion in the 90s. I think he had 43 Formula One appearances as well alongside that. But talking about the numbers wouldn't even scratch the surface of Alex Zanardi as a athlete, as a driver, and as a human being. one of the most remarkable human beings that's ever graced motorsport on and off the track. I mean, RJ, I think I'll let you lead the charge on this one a little bit, because he's really more America's racing darling to a degree than us filthy Europeans to a degree. So I think it's only fair I tip the hat to you a little bit more on this one.
Well, thank you. And I mean, Zanardi is one of those prime cases of how Formula One failure to launch really should never define one's career, because Zanardi's 2 stints in Formula One were filled with frustrations, setbacks. His first major brush with death at the 1993 Belgian Grand Prix, and a lot of what ifs. He spent a lot of that time with first year at Jordan, a cup of coffee at Minardi as an injury substitute that was awful, and 2 half seasons at Lotus, replaced due to injury, and then replacing somebody else due to injury. And then the 1999 season at Williams, in which he came back to a sport that did not gel with him, to an environment that he did not gel with. And at the end of that season, where he went scoreless, he was paid $4 million not to come back to work in the year 2000. But in between that, Alex Zanardi was one of the most spectacular drivers of the late 90s in American open wheel racing. He was, of course, a 2-time kart champion. His famous moment is the pass at Laguna Seca that he put on Brian Hurd in the final lap to win that race. Now, that wasn't his first win, but that was the win that kind of put Zanardi on the map towards, like, this is a guy that's going to be a superstar and a great of the sport for many years to come. And he was. He won back-to-back championships with Chip Ganassi in 97 and 98. He was all over commercials for Honda and Target. In one of the last eras where American open wheel racing had that cachet, where it could be something that's mainstream and on advertisements all the time, because it's like, it's him and it's Jimmy Vasser, and they're fronting all the commercials for Target. And because Honda's doing so well in IndyCar at that time, that extends to the Honda side of things as well for advertising. And it's kind of crazy to think that at first there was hesitation from within the Chip Ganassi racing camp to bring this guy on. His engineer, Mo Nunn, didn't think that he had the temperament to stick around in IndyCar and be a success, but Chip overruled him, saying he's too not good not to bring in, and Chip proved to be very, very right. Like, and it's not just like, I know people talk about the pass all the time as his defining moments. It's no coincidence that when the news came out, Grazie Alex was written on the side of the corkscrew at Laguna Seca, where we all were, and his portrait was on the other side of the track. But I also think back to Long Beach 1998. He gets caught up in a first lap accident. He drops a lap down, comes all the way back to win that race on the final laps. Of course, he overtakes Brian Herta to do it. But that was like just a shred of the talent he displayed. Those were just some of the reasons why Zanardi was so spectacular to watch in his heyday. And like the accident at the Lausitzring in 01. The tragic irony of that was the race where Zanardi, on an upstart team who'd had a horrible 2001 return to kart to that point, that was the race where it looked like Zanardi was going to get back to victory lane. Instead, that was the accident that changed his life forever. That was the accident where he lost his legs, and honestly, he probably should not have even survived the night, but
he was read the last rites.
He was read the last rites, but he not only survived, he worked his butt off to recover, to get the technology in place that he could get back behind the wheel of a racing car. One of the most emotional moments during the Depression years of the American open wheel racing split, no matter which side of the split you were loyal to, was when kart came back to the Lausitzring in 03. Zanardi, in a modified version of the car that he drove in 01, with the hand controls, did the 13 laps that he didn't get to finish in 01. And his racing career didn't stop there. He was a race winner multiple times in the World Touring Car Championship. He graced us with his presence in DTM, IMSA, Super GT. And when he had seemingly proven himself to do everything that he could in his racing comeback, he went out, started almost a new career out of kind of like a hobby of hand cycling.
Mm-hmm.
And then he had another Hall of Fame career right after that.
He was a 4-time Paralympic gold medalist in hand cycling as a K4 and K5 athlete. He won 12 world championships as a hand cyclist, as well as still being able to race part-time. He got to drive a BMW Formula One car with adapted hand controls in a test, and it was a touching, emotional moment to see him back in Formula One, albeit just for a test. It was remarkable, and that technology is something that's advanced to the point where we now see fellow paraplegic Robert Wickens be able to drive a GT3 car with hand controls with almost seamless transparency compared to the fully able-bodied. And I haven't got a huge amount to add to what RJ's already said, but like this was a man that was transcendent beyond motorsport in terms of what he meant to motorsport and beyond. This was an inspirational figure, the embodiment of strength and courage. I remember sitting down watching, for those of you in the UK will know this TV show, The Last Leg, where one of the people on The Last Leg is Alex Brooker, who is also a paraplegic. And he talked about how Alex Zanardi was his hero, and talked about how he was read the last rites, talked about what an inspiration he was. And we barely got coverage in the UK in its heyday in the late 90s, early 2000s. It was the sort of thing that if you're lucky, you'd get it on Sky Sports 4 as a repeat, like 3 or 4 days down the road. And yet his story was transcendent beyond that, and it meant something to so many people in and out of the sport. He was someone who touched and was an inspiration to everybody he was around in motorsport. Everybody loved him. He was on Letterman to tell his story. He was in every racing paddock you could think of, and everybody loved him. And the most passionate and the most amazing thing I can say about Alex was that was a man who truly loved life, especially given it had been nearly taken away from him so many times already.
Yeah.
And he loved and appreciated everybody and everything in life. And I don't want to be sad that he's gone. I want to celebrate that man's legacy, because that, as the man himself would say, life is for living. And that man lived 2 lives, and he didn't even make it to 60. Which is just one of the most remarkable human beings we've ever had in motorsport. And he's going to be so badly missed by so many. I mean, Gareth, throw in a few words if you want, my man.
I can't.
I don't really know how to follow any of that up. I mean, if he was known on track for his absolute ruthlessness in kart, the pass, the comeback in Long Beach, being the original Alex who would torture all of his opponents for Mr. Chip Ganassi. His 97 and 98 kart championships are some of the most dominant in recent memory. But more than that, post-accident, the level of resilience he showed needs to also be commended, but also just being an incredible human being. The inspiration that he did show to so many people, but also, and Dario Franchitti talks about this in written words, that when he came to, the first question he asked was, could he still hold his son?
Oof.
If I can, then it's only like I've cut a finger. And then joking, I've done the trials. My leg, I'm taller now. Like to have that outlook in the face of such tremendous adversity, the world is a dimmer place for having lost Alex. Just an incredible, incredible human being.
And I'll add to that as well. When he won his first set of Paralympic gold medals, 2 individual, 1 team, silver. That came at a time where people were really, really losing faith in some of the great athletes that they once revered. This is right off of the Lance Armstrong performance-enhancing drug scandal. This is off of Oscar Pistorius' scandal. And people were genuinely looking towards what people in sport can we really look up to and trust. And there was Alex, who was just, he was 100%. He was one of a kind. He was genuine. He was everything that we say he was as a racing driver, as an athlete, and as a person. And I'm not going to turn this into a full IMSA race recap, but I watched Porsche driver Lauren Heinrich put on a performance that, even though it wasn't a shot-for-shot recreation of the 96 Laguna Seca race, the pass for the win didn't come at the corkscrew, it came in the infield. But the way that I saw Heinrich drive for privateer JDC Miller Motorsports in the sole surviving privately entered top class prototype left in racing, I thought that was Zanardi-esque. That was everything that Alex gave you as a driver at the absolute peak of his abilities. Could he be a bit of a loose cannon sometimes? Absolutely. But when he was on it, he was absolutely unbeatable.
Sum it up any better than that.
Lauren Heinrich, the man that you are, is what I said after that race. That was spectacular.
Lauren Heinrich, early investment can make you money. And I'm rich right now.
Yeah.
That boy is so good.
Well, watch that minute.
So good, he got promoted today.
Yeah, he's going to be a factory driver for them going forward in 2027 full time. Yeah, I remember this was minutes after the NASCAR race finished over the weekend. There was about 10 minutes to go in that IMSA race at Laguna Seca. So being our Discord server, we all piled in to watch the closing minutes of that race, and I mumbled to myself when I watched that. Alex would have been proud of that one. That was spectacular.
I like to think wherever he is, he had that classic Zanardi grin on his face.
And to put a neat little bow on it, the star that shines twice as brightly only shines for half as long, and that was Alex Zanardi in a nutshell. What a man, what a human being. He will be sorely, sorely missed. Let's review Miami.
Well, safe to say, the Miami Grand Prix was a fluctuating beast of a weekend. Hashtag fluctuating beast. Get it trending worldwide. So we've been away from F1 for a month, if you couldn't tell, and the playing field has changed a bit. We'll talk about it. So McLaren dominating the early going with a newly upgraded car. Lando Norris took the pole for the sprint and then backed it up with a McLaren 1-2 in the sprint. Oscar Piastri second and Charles Leclerc third, with Kimi Antonelli, championship leader Kimi Antonelli, deported from 4th to 6th due to track limits. Also, Charles Leclerc's performance early in the weekend giving many hope that the church can be rebuilt. But after Parc Fermé reopened, it was much like before, as Andrea Kimi Antonelli won his third straight pole ahead of a surprise Max Verstappen monster lap that put him on the outside of the front row. But of course, because Florida as the Sunshine State is a lie, the race itself, the Grand Prix, was pulled 3 hours earlier than usual to dodge the worst of the local thunderstorms that threatened the area. Now, I know many people had talked about, this is another case of Formula One that's too scared to race in the rain. No, we are particularly touchy.
No, this looked particularly bad.
This is particularly touchy towards thunder and lightning storms, considering at a recent NASCAR race at Pocono about a decade and a half ago, somebody died due to lightning strikes. That's not good. That's why we're particularly touchy about thunder and lightning. That's why NASCAR has a lightning clock.
It's why most events in America have a lightning round. For basically, for those who don't know, if lightning strikes, I believe it's within 7 miles of a mass gathering, you have to shut your event down for at least 30 minutes and tell everybody in the building to evacuate and seek shelter. So obviously Formula One did not want to have to red flag their race and tell potentially 80,000 fans to go seek shelter in the middle of a Grand Prix. Not ideal. So the teams all got together, beat their heads together, and basically said, all right, what if we pull it 3 hours earlier? I can tell you for a fact, the whole day was available. Nothing was off the table. Apparently they could have started as early as 8 a.m. local time if it really came down to it. That was the best shots of getting a Grand Prix. And ironically, it was really wet, and we had that thunderstorm warning to start the morning, and we got it afterwards. So the pocket in between was literally perfect. Formula One nailed it in that regard. They were almost too good. The Formula 2 race was wet. By the time it was over, it was almost dry.
I do appreciate that the teams in the series came together to, move the race up despite, the valuable television window. Maybe there are other single-seaters series maybe on the other side of the Pacific that could learn from this. But off the line in the Grand Prix, it was Charles Leclerc with yet another hole shot to take the early lead. Max Verstappen spun over the apex curb at turn 2. He was lucky to avoid getting hit by the field passing by. And then just minutes later, Pierre Gasly got launched upside down at the wall, the final hairpin, via Liam Lawson, which was not fun. Lando Norris
couldn't control the car on the way in. The car was apparently jammed in neutral into the braking zone at 210 miles an hour.
There's no engine braking at all.
That could have been far worse. Thankfully, everybody okay.
Thankfully, so much so. Lando Norris led the early going for about 15 laps, but middle of the race, McLaren kept him out just one lap too long. Antonelli undercut him, giving Mercedes the lead, which Kimi Antonelli would not lose the rest of the way. And Andrea Kimi Antonelli became the first F1 driver ever to convert his first 3 pole positions into 3 wins. And with it, he now carries a 20-point lead in the championship over his teammate George Russell, who only managed 4th place behind Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri. And don't forget, bonus round, carnage at the end of the race. Leclerc intentionally shut off his active arrow to try a counterattack on Oscar Piastri at the end. He failed, and then he spun on the final lap, hitting the wall and breaking his steering arm. He limped the car over the line, cutting 4 corners to do so. He finished 6th on the road, but he picked up a 20-second time penalty for leaving the track with no justification, which dropped him to 8th in the final standings. The church will not be rebuilt. So, Dre, what do you make of the state of the field now after a month off, after a race like this?
Sorry, I'm too busy trying to get an insurance payout on this church again. No. This was a very interesting weekend in that, Ferrari and McLaren and Red Bull were all teasing major upgrade packages going in. Ferrari finally debuted their Macarena wing, as it's been nicknamed. Red Bull had theirs, and it was laughably big.
That wing is hilarious to watch in motion, mainly because the Oracle logo then appears mirrored up over the slots of the wing end plates.
Yeah, well, we joked
so it just looks like a graphical anomaly on the back of the car.
We joked about cuffing season with Oscar Piastri in Formula 2 a few years ago. You'd have to have a piece that was a foot wide to be able to jam that rear wing, let me tell you.
That is M101 deep lore from one Mr. Harrison.
That was a whopper.
Would we have ever thought that Oscar Piastri would have been a title contender at that moment of time? Probably
not. But probably not. It depends how you want to look at it, I suppose.
Depends how grippy the tracks are.
And to be fair, I think Lando summed it up quite nicely on Saturday night after the Grand Prix qualifying was over. McLaren, I think, just nailed the early setup of their new car early on and was able to take advantage of that going into Saturday morning in the sprint. Because
if you've heard that one before, McLaren brings an upgrade package to Miami. It's money.
And it works. McLaren are now probably the best in-season developers in Formula One. They've done this before where they'll bring a big package around and it works really, really well. And it showed. I mean, Norris was brilliant in sprint qualifying and McLaren dominated the sprint. They were completely untouchable. Norris led from turn 1 and wasn't touched the rest of the way. Piastri couldn't stay with him. And Charles Leclerc, being Satan's strongest soldier, tried to stay with him but just couldn't manage it. But then, for me at least, when Parc Fermé reopened after the sprint race, which is what it does now over a sprint weekend, it seemed that the status quo seemed to just readjust back into what we've seen before, where Mercedes was just able to figure it out, and they were a lot stronger on Grand Prix qualifying, and then the race itself.
One of them was.
Well, one of them was. George Russell really doesn't like Miami.
No, it's just not his track. Conversely, Kimi's pole lap was mighty, to the point where he could not better it. He did the first lap, and no one else even came close, including
Max.
himself. Max got close enough. Talk about Red Bull for a second. The steering rack was broken. News that we found out this week. They had a fundamental flaw in their steering system. They threw it out, redesigned it, and alongside most of the other upgrades, and their car was substantially, visibly changed alongside McLaren and Ferrari. Oh, great. We gave Max positive front end again. Whacks it on the front row.
Uh-oh.
Immediately punches Isak Hajar's head off.
Oh, brother. And Hadjar, a tough day. He was one of the people that crashed out. And his was only the second lap.
Entirely of his own volition, no less.
At the time, which, man, that's a bummer. Because, like, that happened, like, around the same time as the Gasly and Lawson flip.
Yeah,
different parts of the same lap.
It was a manic first 2 laps. We had Colapinto almost run Hamilton completely off the road and broke a part of his car off. We had Hadjar smash into the outside wall where the roundabout is. And then we had Gasly getting launched into the back wall, all pretty much within 2 minutes of each other, which brought out that early safety car.
Macarena wing? No, Macarena car.
Hey, Macarena, hi. It was chaos, the start of that race. I mean, Leclerc, again, no surprise. I mean, I think Leclerc's now plus 12 off the line so far this season in Grand Prix.
Mercedes can give me any explanation they want. I just think this is going to be the funny plot, like chink in the armor for Mercedes all year. They're just terrible at starts.
They just can't start. And honestly, this was the sort of race where I think they were on the brink of being punished. I think McLaren, once again, was too tentative on strategy. They left Norris out 1 lap too long. Like, as Cam alluded to earlier, stop me if you've heard this one before. McLaren was too tentative on strategy, and it probably cost them the win. Because the McLaren was great. The McLaren was really, really good in race trim, enough where it was giving Antonelli something to think about. And Norris was visibly frustrated after that race was over, finishing second, because the first thing he said to his engineer was, how the fuck did we not win this race? Because Norris...
They let Mercedes play offense against them. Yeah. And fair play to Kimi. His outlap was almighty. And it needed to be, because he came out basically right next to Norris. He needed every 1,000 on that in lap. But also, I need to point this out. Mercedes came here with a new bracket for their exhaust. Their car was effectively still in start of the season spec. And 3 massive upgrade packages. Ferrari were actually further off. Which, stop me if you've heard that one before. Ferrari introduces upgrade package, goes nowhere. Red Bull are definitely closer, and McLaren are probably there. Mercedes didn't have any major upgrades. It's disturbing.
Yeah, that is a worrying sign that McLaren brought the upgrade package. It's the Fight Night round 3 slow motion uppercut that lands, and yet Mercedes comes back and hits them with a counterpunch that puts the other dude on the canvas. Now,
knocked them out like the Hawks were knocked out in that Game 7 against New York.
Oof, ugly. Chair to the back.
Kind of one-sided, isn't it?
Yeah, like it was rough, but it goes to show you the strength of that Mercedes car, where it could take a counter shot from McLaren, who we all know has beaten Mercedes pillar to post for the last 2 years, and is basically, they did the ground effects better than they did as a factory team in the previous era. But this time, Mercedes was able to come back and win. Look, Kimi Antonelli is super. Look, we got the full range of Kimi. He was silly in the sprint for getting that track limits penalty. That was completely avoidable, and you shouldn't be doing that at any level at this point. Like, you got a track limits penalty on a street circuit.
Usually that involves knocking a corner off your car.
You've got to try to get one of those in on a street track, but then in the Grand Prix, had to hold off, had to do a 35 lap hard stint on his car with Lando Norris breathing down his neck for 2/3 of that race, and he withstood the pressure and didn't give Norris an inch. Superb driving.
Yeah, and ended up breaking Norris in the end of that stint because Norris sat behind him, tried just about everything he could not get that gap under about 7/10, is about as small as it got. And then his front tires began to just cry enough. And that's having fought through downshift issues in the middle of the race as well. Like, Kimi had to drive as perfect a race as possible to get the win, and did do so. And also fair play to Mercedes, who, hey, now that they're a front runner again, they can go back to bullying other people for doing the obvious strategy call. Like they used to do with Ferrari, when Ferrari would just self-immolate their entire race. If McLaren is going to give them that opening in the armor, they might as well take it.
Easily done. Kimi now with a 20-point lead. He's on historic pace. He's the only person ever to convert his first 3 poles into race wins. In fact, the only 2 other drivers that have won their first Grand Prix consecutively, Mika Hakkinen and Damon Hill. 2 pretty good drivers.
Not too bad.
No,
what about the first 3 to get their first 3 poles consecutively?
I believe that was Ayrton Senna in 1985 and Michael Schumacher in 94, I want to say.
Oh, no big company then.
No, only 2 of the 5 greatest to ever do it, most likely. It's not bad company, is it?
No.
I mean, before we move on to some of the more technical side of this, what did you guys make of the end of that race? Because that was absolute chaos, the final 2 laps of that race.
Charles Leclerc. I would follow Charles Leclerc to hell. I just wish he'd stop going there.
We're Sisyphus pushing the boulder up. One day we're going to get to the top of the hill, and it's going to stay at the top of the hill, but that was not that day.
No.
He got too cute.
He got too cute with it. He is on relatively shot tires, as they've both gone past very shot tires Max Verstappen, who had a adventurous day, to put it bluntly.
51 lap hard tire stint to try and one stop all the way to the end off that first safety car. Didn't quite work.
I'd say it worked okay, but it would have worked better had he not spun the car at turn 2 with too heavy a right foot. That said, you'd rather spin from second rather than like 8th, which is where Red Bull has been doing. Leclerc knows that he's boned. Piastri's following him. Piastri's going to get him on this straight. So Leclerc shuts his wings manually and tries to get the overtake mode to blast back past him.
Yep, tries to counterattack.
He then loses the front through the final turn, isn't able to do so, and then lights up the rears and spins going through turn 3 and busts the left front corner of his car.
Breaks steering rack, has to limp it
Steering
home. Steering arm, I should say, yeah, quite right. Has to basically limp it home. Takes all the shortcuts available on the track to try and basically nurse that car home.
A man after Sasha's own heart.
Yep. Piastri's well down the road now. His 3rd place is secure. Meanwhile, he's sinking back into the George Russell-Max Verstappen fight on the final lap as Max is desperately trying to throw the house at George to come back in a fight for 5th. They all basically meet up at the final hairpin. There's contact between Russell and Leclerc. Wheel banging going into the final corner. Leclerc goes wide, and in the end, he gets gunned down on the way to the line. As a direct result of that, Max gets him in a photo finish over the checkered flag, and then we find out post-race Leclerc gets 20 seconds worth. It was a drive-through penalty converted into 20 seconds of time for leaving the track multiple times without a justifiable reason. If that reminds you of anything, yes, it's the Lewis Hamilton penalty from Singapore last year. Only it was much more severe because Charles had basically done it 4 times on the final lap.
He had done it 4 times, and Lewis was a technical failure. His brakes had failed. Charles had put it in the wall and then just decided that because the car could no longer negotiate right turns, he was not going to negotiate any turns. He was going to draw his own lines.
I respect it.
I respect the moxie. I respect the moxie, if not the execution. Not before we found out Max had a 5-second penalty for crossing the white line of pit exit. Oops.
Whoops. Yeah. No.
Which ended up meaning nothing because Leclerc got the 20 seconds. If I'm Ferrari coming out of this weekend, I have no idea what to feel. They just threw 11 upgrades at the car and got their worst result of the year.
I think the phrase is bruised and battered because Leclerc was great in the
like the cars.
Yeah, and then Hamilton's race was ruined by Franco Colapinto because they clashed on the opening lap, and we saw Hamilton
tore the whole left floorboard off of Lewis's car.
Yeah, Lewis Hamilton told him he was going for first, like John Cleland, as a direct result after that incident happened. And yeah, Hamilton was in no man's land after that one with the amount of downforce he'd lost. And then Charles Leclerc does that. So the Ferraris end up, I want to say, 7th and 8th on the day.
6th and 8th.
6th and 8th, yeah.
Because in between, Franco Colapinto, despite that dust-up, fellas, was that his best weekend in Formula One so far?
Yes.
It certainly
is. Yes, without doubt.
Yeah, because it's certainly the best weekend he's had since his first half year at Williams, but before he started getting the yips and started throwing cars into the barrier.
Yeah, for me, his best weekend in Formula One. He out-qualified Gasly twice in both sprint and Grand Prix qualifying. Not so great in the sprint. Got a little bit lucky in the race. He wasn't penalised for that clash on Hamilton. I thought that was I
thought that was very worthy of a penalty.
I thought that was 10 seconds. Wasn't given. In fact, every bit of contact, and there was 4 incidents over the course of this race that were all investigated by the stewards. All of them were deemed no further action.
Argentine bias, question mark?
Who knows? But it was...
Oh, my God.
But it was Franco Colapinto's career-high finish in 7th place, better than the 8th he got for Williams last year in Baku. Apparently, being inspired by meeting Lionel Messi before the race clearly brought out the best in him. Why wouldn't it? It's Lionel fucking Messi.
Sure. Also, my absolute favorite part of this weekend, seeing Max locked in a room with 4 of his exes all at once. When he dropped down into the midfield after his spin, he was then surrounded by Carlos Sainz Jr., Pierre Gasly, Alex Albon. There was one and Liam Lawson.
Yeah.
That is how forgettable Liam Lawson was in this race, even before the gearbox failure.
That was how forgettable his stint at Red Bull was, by the way. And by the way, while we're mentioning Sainz at Albon, shout out for Williams salvaging double points in the Grand Prix from a weekend that looked like it was going nowhere at supersonic speed.
Cadillac was giving them problems in the sprint. Checo was racy on Saturday. I'm just like, God damn. I thought if Cadillac is giving Williams a bloody nose, this is going to be a problem. Thankfully, again, I think reopening Parc Ferme in between was because the thing about Miami is that it's a very challenging technical circuit, especially on the rear of the car. Sector 2 is a nightmare for the back end of an F1 car. Lots of second and third gear corners, a lot of quick direction changes, a lot of undulation. It is a messy bitch, that middle of the track. And if you could get rear grip going mechanically in that car, there was rewards to be had for you. And I think that's probably what switched a lot of the performances of some of these cars around. Even Lando admitted after Saturday, as he said, that, listen, I just think everybody else did a shit job on Friday, and I think Saturday was basically the books being balanced out. But McLaren left this weekend with more points than any other team. So hey, can't say fairer than that. You could argue they were the real winners this weekend.
Good for them. Good for Franco Colapinto. Good for Williams. Not so good for Audi. Ooh, that's tough.
It's ironic that now Audi, it feels like the honeymoon's kind of over. Now it's the, hey guys, get a working car out on track. despite the fact that most of their mechanical issues are not relating to that power unit. It's mostly the car around it. Gabriel Bortoleto was driving a flamethrower in qualifying, and I don't mean that in a good way.
No, breaks the core fire. And Hulkenberg's car just caught fire and shut down on the grid on the way to the sprint race on his sighting lap. I joked on Crash.net that, where I was working as their social admin, and I was like, number of Audi fires so far today? 2. As you do.
We had an engine failure that was just like, damn, this is straight out of the 2000 Fontana 500. If you know, you know.
Old school.
Oh, God.
Proper blowout.
Boom,
like,
confetti.
It was like, oh, that's the big one.
These connecting rods.
Yeah.
Well, what was left of them, to be honest. Okay.
For those keeping score at home, 3 DNSs for Audi so far this season. Not ideal.
And it was barely even a start in the Grand Prix for Hulkenberg because he retired on, lap 2?
Yeah.
7 laps in.
Yeah, car just died. Fun's over, Audi. Time to actually get a reliable car. Because the car is not slow. It's good enough to score points.
Genuinely quick. Although no upgrades this weekend, they probably weren't quick enough to score points this weekend, but you'd expect that given no upgrades compared to teams with a bunch.
Exactly. Real shame that. Now let's talk a little bit of politics. That's always fun on this show.
Awesome.
Because this was also the first weekend as the teams and the FIA promised they were going to sit down and have a conversation in this 5-week forced break, shall we say, to discuss the regulations in regards to the Ollie Bearman and Franco Colapinto crash that we had at the Japanese Grand Prix, where Bearman had a 30-mile-an-hour difference in closing speed. By the way, degree of beef between those two after that was over, because apparently Colapinto sent him a text saying sorry after the race was over, and Bearman ignored it. And it became public knowledge during the first day press conference, where it was like, apparently Colapinto did not like the words that Bearman said. He said, oh, it was a racing incident at first, and then when he'd actually seen the replay, he was like, oh no, like Colapinto was out of order for that, basically. And yeah, got a bit testy on Thursday, so to speak. However, the week before this Grand Prix, there was a sit-down meeting between all the teams and the FIA, and they unanimously agreed, that never happens in Formula One. That is a unicorn as far as I'm concerned. They unanimously agreed to a boatload of changes to the overall state of the regulations. Now, I'm not going to go through all of them because I will put you to sleep if I do. Here's the key notes that I pointed out here. Big one, maximum recharge reduced in general from 8 megajoules to 7 over the course of a single lap. In real-world terms, that's about 1.1 kilowatt hours. Roughly 3 seconds less recharge in real time. Super clipping power, the ability to basically recharge a little bit when you're at full racing, when you're at full throttle to the battery. That's been increased to 350 kilowatts instead of the 250 that we had beforehand. We've now increased the number of races that we can potentially change those limits on the fly from 8 to 12, so more flexibility going into race weekends. The max power boost in races has been capped at 150 kilowatts rather than 250. You'll get the full 350 in overtake zones, 250 on the rest of the lap, to reduce some of that closing speed difference that we saw at Spoon between Bearman and Colapinto. There's also going to be a light system now, a visual warning system to basically similar to 2016 back in the first iteration of the turbo hybrids, where you will now be able to see when a car is harvesting because that rear light will now flash. And off the start line, there will now be automatic MGUK deployment if you're slow off the line. So if you're slow off the line than normal, the power unit will automatically kick in the MGUK, hopefully to avoid a potential smash off the grid. That's the big, bulky changes to the overall regulation set. Now, the drivers have said pretty unanimously it's a step in the right direction. It's not enough of a step. What did you guys make of it watching this race in real time?
I was going to throw that question to you first, because it seemed like the reaction out of the Grand Prix was, I mean, this was the best race of the year. I mean, there are some stuff like the Leclerc Piastri exchange, by and large, that was an exchange that's going to rankle some people the wrong way. But I got the impression coming out of that Miami Grand Prix weekend, a weekend that I had to catch up on after the fact, like, that was a pretty decent race.
Would argue the Leclerc Piastri thing was no different to the DRS. It was literally the DRS games we used to see, just with a different mechanism.
Montreal,
the only reason why Montreal, but also the DR chess that Max and Charles were playing in Saudi Arabia in 22, which was inducing lockups on those two cars as they were trying to play chicken for the DRS down the main straight. The only reason why I think that would end up in any controversy because then Charles binned the car right after the fact.
Yeah.
It happens.
For me, as someone who watched the whole weekend, look, I'm not sure I'm necessarily the best person to ask, and I say that sincerely because I didn't have a huge problem with these regulations going into the Miami Grand Prix. I've been very vocal about saying that I think a lot of the backlash has been a bit of an overreaction. I thought the Colapinto-Behrman clash was something that, okay, we need to address this. This is critical to make as a safety warning that you've got to do something about this in particular. But from a racing standpoint, I didn't have a huge problem with where we were at before Japan and obviously Miami had happened. I thought it was fine. Like, there was still some obvious clipping into the back hairpin. They were coming down from like 215 to like 195 before hitting the brakes for that hairpin. It looked a bit more like lift and coast more than anything else, which, look, people don't. Some of it is. I mean, people don't want to see that in a qualifying lap. I get it. It goes against the very mythos of the sport if you're easing off on a qualifying lap. And again, Lando Norris spoke about that after the fact, basically saying, we still can't go flat out in qualifying because the engine punishes you if you do. That's not what Formula One is about, yada, yada, yada. Okay, fine. Me personally, I've said before, I will take that trade of a slightly duller qualifying spectacle if it means we get a better race as a result. I don't think F1's had a bad race so far this season. I think they've all been at worst good. And I think this is more of a problem of going against what fans want their perception of Formula One to be.
What is their number one value proposition of Formula One?
Feeling like they can't drive a car, doing shit that they know they can't do. Again, it's the mythos of it. It's the vibe. It's the aesthetic of Formula One that this is what these rules are striking out against. And the drivers want more of a say, which is a little bit eyebrow raising. Like the phrase that I saw the most often, and I think it came from Lewis Hamilton in very Roman Reigns-esque kind of fashion. I want a seat at the table, etc. Acknowledge me, etc. But I'm not sure if I want the drivers' opinions on the table after how the regulations played out on overtaking last year, which, again, was a messy bitch, to say the least. So, I don't know. I mean, Cam, how did you feel about it? Because you're a bit more technically minded than I am.
I didn't really get to talk much about Japan.
No.
I thought Japan would have been a terrible, awful race, much like the previous year, had Mercedes actually gotten off the line.
Yeah.
I think that's the difference maker, is how much of the action are we seeing because a car that up until this race had 7 or 8 tenths on the field kept getting dropped down into the field. My concern for these rules, and I think these help to alleviate that a bit, but then don't, is that the only mechanism to actually create a pass is to use the battery. For some of them, that's completely fine. It's no different to what DRS used to be in a lot of ways. but it being the only way is a problem. And that's because these cars don't generate any slipstream, because on the straights, they've got the wings open.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And in ditching the ground effect cars, which had completely jumped the shark even by really, I would say, quarter of the way through 2024,
yeah,
they just couldn't follow one another anymore. Throwing that all out and going back to flat floor, most of the downforce is topside, and then taking away the ability to slipstream on a natural level, I just think these aero regs are shit.
I think this was always going to be a problem eventually, i.e., where's that dirty air going to come from? Because we've gone to a much more topside downforce heavy product compared to what we have of the ground effect era. If anything, maybe the battery and the super clipping issues that people have talked about has only accelerated that process. My first thought watching the sprint was, well, I hope the qualifying laps looked good, because the sprint was a bit of a nothing burger on Saturday as a direct result of that, where the field was very spread out and it was hard to pass. It was a bit better in the Grand Prix, but naturally... Go on, Cam, yeah.
Well, what was one of the big action points of the Grand Prix? Max Verstappen drops down the field due to an error, and then has to brute force his way back up.
Yeah.
That's where a lot of the action came from, and that's always fun. It's never unexciting when Max is stuck in the midfield, because he will drive like a complete fucking madman, for better and for worse.
Some of those overtakes were very borderline.
One of those he probably should have got a penalty for. He ran Lawson clean off the fucking road.
Yeah.
Extremely silly behavior. I just wonder how much legs this regulation set has if we get half a year of aero development and people fix their starts.
If we get... Because we've not really had, at least in my opinion, a status quo race where Mercedes, who have been the dominant team so far this season, have led pretty much from start to finish. Because in Australia, it took them about 15 laps to settle themselves. In China, it took George Russell about 2/3 of the race to get open air against the Ferraris. Kimi Antonelli was long gone by that point. Japan, similar deal. Once Antonelli got open air off the pit strategy, he was long gone, and the rest of it had to fight with each other. And George just had a bad weekend. He didn't even get on the podium in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
And this was a similar. This was the closest one yet. This was Lando Norris certainly giving Anthony something to think about over the course of this race. But again, George Russell was a second-class citizen in his own team on this occasion. And
well, but I mean, look at the Kimi and Norris fight. He got to 7/10 and then couldn't get any closer. That feels very familiar.
It does, doesn't it?
And that being 5 races into a brand new regulation set is very, very concerning.
Because teams are going to figure out the most efficient way of deploying their batteries. It's inevitable.
Feels like McLaren already kind of has.
Yeah, they will figure this out. If they haven't already, they're certainly close. You know, we're only going to add more topside downforce once people figure out what makes these cars quick with their aero. And that could get to a point where if the battery can't even... And even if the battery does brute force that problem, fans aren't going to like it, because it's been made abundantly clear by a very large vocal minority of Formula One fans they'd rather see no overtakes than quote-unquote fake ones. So
I'm fine with the battery being a part of the quote of the overtakes. I'm much more concerned if it's the only way you can generate an overtake, because that will dry up. As the power units converge, that will dry up very quickly.
You may even say that's not a renewable resource. Is that a good segue into our next point that, like, guys, Mohammed bin Sulayem says V8s are coming back to F1, quote, it's coming. At the end of the day, it's a matter of time. In 2031, the V8, the FIA will have the power to do it without any votes from the PUMs, that's power unit manufacturers. That's the regulations, but we want to bring it 1 year earlier to 2030, which everyone is now asking for. And I'm just thinking to myself, of course you do, you're 12.
To be fair, and I can't believe I'm to a degree defending Mohammed Ben Sulayem here, but if you are a politician, which is what he is, and you've seen the court of public opinion, wouldn't now be the best time possible to talk about a V8 comeback?
I mean, it's just
now we like when he acts like a dictator.
See, now I just find it crazy that like those two extra cylinders in the combustion engine are the difference between this is pure racing, this is what fans want to see, and this is pure utter woke slop. It's just two extra cylinders that make the difference to people between V6 and V8s with some electrification. They're not going to be fully unelectrified, unhybridized, according to these proposals.
No,
it's just going to be adding two extra cylinders to the engine itself, and also make it a little less reliant on the hybrid/electric element, the battery element.
Yes. We need to see what's actually like drawn up on an initial proposal, but the thought is that it would be 2.4 liter V8s like what we used to have, but turbocharged and fuel flow limited. And then the level of hybrid would be to be determined.
So then,
now,
that's it. This is just what we had, but with two more cylinders.
Exactly.
Without the MGOH.
Well, yeah, and we don't have the MGOH now either. I don't know, because there's so much more to this than just V6, but that's where so many people's brains go with F1 of V6.
Yeah.
When in reality, the source of the sound not being what it used to be is a little bit V6. It's a lot more. They can't rev past really 12,000 RPM.
12,000. Yeah,
because they're fuel flow limited. You can't, if you rev it any higher, you're not making any extra power. If we keep them fuel flow limited, which I would expect them to be, if we're retaining sustainable fuels, the V8s probably aren't going to sound anything like the old V8s either, because those were spinning to 18, and you think, well, the turbo V8s in kart sounded amazing, and they did. Those were revving past 15 grand.
Yeah, and my honest to God first thoughts were this was a coup by MBS. I thought this was a Max Mosley-esque power play by Mohammed Ben Sulayem to basically try and bully Mercedes out of the paint. Because this all sounded like Stefano Domenicali was in agreement as well. This was all, can we get a cheap power unit so we don't need Mercedes power anymore by making it a simplified V8 hybrid? Now, before Cam interjects, because I know he's gagging to, and to borrow a phrase from old Celtics coach Rick Pitino, Cosworth is not walking through that door. Not on this occasion. And well,
Judd is not walking through that door. And if it did, it would be old and broken down.
Look, right now we're looking at a situation where Mechachrome and Vari are probably going to be Chinese owned by the end of the year. They ain't walking through that door.
Get ready for Yangwang Signatech in 2028, baby.
And I wish I could pour water into your computer remotely.
No, the thing is, right, that's what I originally thought. I thought this was an MBS coup attempt here. Until Mercedes basically called his bluff and said, we'd love a V8. In fact, give us 1,200 horsepower.
Yeah.
That's an option.
Because that's the thing. Like, what is Mercedes AMG's line of, like, high-end luxury coupes and sedans? These are basically German muscle cars with supercharged V8s in them anyway.
Well, not for quite a while. In fact, they tried to go all in on the F1 side of the equation with an inline four with an NGUH attached to it. They're pretty much the only production company, if you don't count the Ferrari F80, and most people are never going to get to drive one of those. Mercedes did bring the previous power unit technology to the road, not just in the record-shattering AMG one. You could get a C-Class with that kind of technology. And everyone fucking hated it, and they stuffed a V8 back in it. Mercedes loves V8s.
Yeah, like, this was, at least in my opinion, and I'm pretty fluent in F1 politics, this was Toto Wolff calling MBS's bluff. This is like, all right, go on, then. We're down for it. Bring your V8s in. And honestly, the way I see it, if Mercedes is down for it, this is what's going to happen. It's going because if the FIA is down for it, if the FOM is down for it, and Mercedes, which let's not forget, powers 4 of the other teams on the grid, including themselves, are down for it. That means you're almost certainly going to have half the supermajority needed to ram these rules through anyway. We might even get it in 2030, like what MBS teased last week when he spoke to Reuters about this.
Yeah.
Nothing's going to stop this now if Mercedes are truly down for it. It's going to happen now, and it's going to be a matter of whether it's going to be 2030 or 2031. And I'm sitting there thinking, if you're Cadillac, what is the point of now building your own power unit where it might be one and done? Because they're meant to debut in 2029 with their own power unit, and it might be one and done now.
Well, we're going to need to look at the terms of that Ferrari contract because General Motors loves V8s, Ford loves V8s. Like, if Mercedes are down for it and they get a certain, the problem, and I think the disconnect that you're going to see is you're going to see teams split on what kind of V8 hybrids we get. Are they going to be heavily turbocharged, electrified V8s? Are they going to be NA V8s on sustainable fuel and a tiny hybrid? I think you're then going to see it splinter from there.
Yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, Mercedes absolutely be down for V8s. Ford will be down for V8s. Their most iconic car is V8 powered.
The only car they sell in North America is V8 powered, because I'm not counting trucks and SUVs. General Motors has the most famous crate engine you can buy for your car in the LS motor.
That's game genie of engines.
And to the point about, because maybe the odd one out would be Honda because they don't make any V8s right now for their passenger cars. They also don't make any cars where the internal combustion engine is a stressed member of that car. And we recently learned that Great Wall Motors out in China wants to make a Chinese-produced GT3 car. They don't make any cars with combustion engines for the consumer market. They're just going to get a V8 and drop it in a GT3 car.
Honestly, at this stage, given the state of Aston Martin, I don't think anyone's really going to care if Honda stays or leaves. And the best part is their problems this weekend weren't even engine. They've cured the vibration issues, but this weekend the gearbox was on the fritz. And Alonso said it was not on Honda, it's on Aston Martin. When it doesn't rain, it pours over there.
When it shits, it's
slower than Formula 2 on some laps. Dear God.
Yeah, the fastest Aston Martin on Saturday qualifying was Mary Boyer in Formula 2 in a Aston Martin painted Prima.
Well, we know Prima is a huge budget team with no issues behind the scenes, so
that's right.
You know. Yeah, it's all fine. The dynasty has fallen. This is now in Victor's land, occasionally spearheaded by Dino Beganovic, as you do.
Just as well as like Audi also produces a line of turbocharged V8s. Yeah. I think everyone would be down for this. I just don't think it's going to bring you what you think. And I think NBS knows that, but NBS, if nothing else, has to make himself the main character.
That's right. He is desperate for attention. He's desperate to be loved.
For a man who built his entire manifesto on there's more to the FIA than Formula One, that man cannot help but fucking meddle in it every 2 goddamn seconds whenever he gets an opportunity. And like I said, if he's going to make a push for a V8 comeback, now is the perfect time for it, because this is the one time in the court of public opinion he may actually win something. Because everything else he's done has pretty much been laughed out of the room besides, hey, maybe we don't think Formula One should be owned by Saudis. You know, it's a low bar, but he cleared it somehow.
Ooh, with the clairvoyance that he had on that.
Oh, man. Rest in piss, live golf.
How we live
as well? We ain't. And to that effect, if you're revving a turbo V8 to like 11, 12,000 RPM, people are going to fucking hate how that thing sounds.
Yeah, but it's got 2 extra cylinders. It's not V6 slot.
It's just going to mean people want the V10s, which really aren't happening.
That's not going to happen.
Dear William Buxton, using Formula One's regulation talk as a way of gassing up IndyCar when their next engine has already been confirmed is not going to work. ... I thought this is what they hired you for. Yours sincerely, Dre Harrison.
I wish Will Buxton could be right. However, the Reynard 98i with a 2.65 liter turbocharged to the tits V8 is not walking through that door.
But it got Alex Rossi to QRT him. That's perfect.
Great.
No.
He could also be a Republican politician.
No.
Oh,
it's
great.
not.
My favorite.
Cam. Oh, no, Cam. It's not walking through that door because there's a red and yellow one that's one lap ahead.
Damn right.
We miss you, Alex. That'll just about do it for this episode of Motorsport 101. We are back next week for quite possibly MotoGP's Blue Ribbon event, the French Grand Prix at Le Mans.
And it's projected to pour on Sunday.
The weather report's saying the big piss is coming on Sunday. Over 110,000 very damp French people are going to watch potentially another classic. Who knows how that one is going to play out if it rains on Sunday? Can't wait. We'll be back to review that then. And yeah, of course, places you can find us before we get out. We didn't get into the top of the show. We're on youtube.com/motorsport101. We're on facebook.com/motorsport101. We're on Twitter at motorsport_101. If you want to follow our personal handles, you can on Blue Sky. Dre Harrison, RJ O'Connell, cbuck2917.bsky.social. You can get highlights of the show on our Instagram page, Motorsport101pod, and our TikTok account, M101_podcast. If you want to get a massive DRR reviewing all of the shit that went down in Miami over the course of that weekend, check out the website as well and the blog section on motorsport101.com. We'll be back, as mentioned, next week for more. And of course, don't check out the Patreon as well, patreon.com/motorsport101. $5 gets you access to all of our content. $10 gets you into the supporters club. One of the biggest turnouts we've ever had for a podcast on this one. Ed, Vic, Kira, Jason, Ghost Raptor, Max was here, Rory was here for a little while. Thanks everybody for rolling up, much appreciated. Hope you guys enjoyed the show tonight. And of course, we'll be back, like I said, next week, MotoGP, French Grand Prix, and we'll be talking a little bit of IndyCar on Saturday night because they will have the Indy Grand Prix, I think it's the Soncio Grand Prix,
Grand Prix,
as they officially call it. Will Alex Palou make it somehow 4 in a row on the IMS road course? We'll be back to check that out next week. Until then, I've been Dre Harrison. They've been RJ O'Connell and Cameron Buckley. And, well, on a great weekend where we had Gabriele Mini and Andrea Kimi Antonelli both win for the Italian flag. This one, like those two, were for Alex. Good night.
The most powerful engine you have is your passion. Later, y'all.